What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another album review, and today I am talking about the latest offering from Faithxtractor, Loathing and the Noose. This also came out on January 10th, this time on Redefining Darkness Records, and this is the band's 5th album overall. I actually got into this band with their last album that came out actually around this same time 2 years ago, and I reviewed it on Under the Radar, and I thought it was a pretty damn good death metal album. So yeah, for those who don't know, Faithxtractor, they're a death metal band from Cincinnati, Ohio, so literally just 2 hours west of where I am. And yeah, so this is their 5th album overall, my second time listening to these guys. Of course, this is a two-person project. You have, I believe, Ash Thomas, I believe, is the main guy behind the band who does pretty much everything but bass on this album. And, of course, he came from bands like Shed the Skin, Asheron, and other bands along those lines. So yeah, I was curious to check out this one and do a full review for Faithxtractor because basically their style of death metal, it's kind of like almost a death metal sampler platter almost. Like you get some old school death metal tropes, you get some thrashiness, some doom, some mellow death, kind of all blended into one. Even little hints of technicality will kind of get sprinkled in here and there on a few tracks. But right off the rip with this album, the first 3 tracks all definitely have like old school death metal pretty much all throughout. Like Noose of Being, The Loathing, and Fever Dream Litanies. All these songs carry so much in the way of old school death metal. Like in Noose of Being, it starts off with eerie ambience before you get into these like awesome killer tremolo harmonies that almost harken back to Dismember, Entombed, like Swedish death metal, only no HM2 guitars. That's the only difference. And then it gets into like lumbering grooves and then blast beats and then into like Florida death metal, kind of like that thrashy death metal, very much in the vein of Deicide, I would say. But it does have a really cool, like, melodic doom break before you get into, like, big guitar squeals. The Loathing gets a little more savage in the riffs and the blasts, almost like modern Vital Remains, but it is more melodic than I would say that was more than Noose of Being. But then you get into the awesome triplet chugs, but there's even little atonal guitars, a melodic lead, and even like a dissonant melodic break. And now I gotta say the lead work on this album is very diverse. Like you get a lot of like lead melodies or melodic solos or just flat out thrashy shred. And like here on The Loathing, you get a lot of thrashy shred. And then Fever Dream Litanies, pretty much for the most part, it's just blunt force trauma when it comes to like triplet grooves, eerie riffs. It even gets a little bit into tech death territory because some of the riffs and blasts get a little more technical, almost bordering on cryptopsy levels of insanity before it gets into more of those like death thrash tropes. But then you get into Flooded Tombs, and this is where the album starts shifting a little bit. Of course, it starts off with very much old school death metal, like sinister tremolos and triplet chugs, tremolo melodies, and then suddenly it decides, instead of going 95 miles an hour, like, oh yeah, look at me, I'm driving on the highway and no motherfucker can stop me, and then all of a sudden they see trooper cars, it's like, okay, let's slow down to like 25. So, yeah, I'm kind of using that analogy that Necrotic Nick said, but that is really the best way to kind of describe it. It just pumps the brakes and then suddenly into, like, funeral doom. Like, it gets into these, like, dark, brooding funeral doom riffs and beats that almost kind of feel like incantation, like the song the Immaculate, or Abolishment of Immaculate Serenity. I couldn't remember the song title off the top of my head, but it's kind of that level of like dark, brooding, eerie, funeral doom kind of vibe before it does suddenly go back to being thrashy and fast and shred-tastic. Ethos Moribund this was probably the thrashiest. Well, one of two songs I would say that were the thrashiest of them all. I would say this and Beholden to the Nightmare. Both of these songs just thrash to the bone. Like Ethos Moribund, you get like thrashy tremolo riffs. It's very energetic, tremolo melodies. But then you get some like off-time groove. Like actually in Flooded Tombs, it gets off time a little bit, so it's like back to back you get like off time rhythms, but then it gets into like double time, like almost like a thrashier bolt thrower, and then even a great lead melody that almost feels directly out of At the Gates playbook before it gets into shredding solos. Caveats starts off with like whispers and piano, and this is the most dissonant song on the entire album. There was teases of atonalness on the Loathing, but here on Caveats, it goes full on dissonant and atonal, very much in the vein of like Immolation, maybe a little bit of Ulcerate, but it grooves pretty well, and then you get like dark, somber melodies, and then suddenly we get back into thrash and triplet grooves. Now, Beholden to the Nightmare, like I said, this was maybe the other big thrashy barn burner on the album. Nasty, like, onslaught of riffs. More atonal riffs, but not as atonal. And then eerie melodies come in towards the end. But then you get to the closer, Cerecloth Vision Veil. Longest track of the album at nearly 7 minutes. And holy cow, we switch gears to Death Doom for the majority of this song, like almost bordering between bands like My Dying Bride, Catatonia, and dare I say even Hooded Menace too. Like it's a hybrid of all three of those with this song, to where it sounds somber, but not in like Swallow the Sun type way. More like I said in like early Catatonia, My Dying Bride, Hooded Menace, like those kind of somber melodies. And then you get this like really cool dark tremolo riff on top. Then all of a sudden we get back to old school death metal, like thrashy, groovy, triplet chugs, solos, and then it ends on that more somber, doomy note. So honestly, overall, I can't really find too much to complain about, other than maybe some of the transitions on this album, like especially in Flooded Tombs, where after it's blunt force trauma and off time, suddenly it stops and into Funeral Doom. Would have been cool if you could have like added a drum fill that like starts off fast and then slows down, then into the Funeral Doom. Like there were some transitions that were a little too sharp, a little too abrupt. But overall, song-wise, all these songs kicked ass in their own way. I am actually going to go bold. I'm going to give this 4.5 out of 5. Already we got an early contender for the year-end list. Will it stay that way? Who knows? But right off the bat, this was an awesome album. I might actually pick this one up. But of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Until next time, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.